Hello and welcome to the meaning of meaning, and we call it binary apologetics with the semantic primes. And today I want to focus on why I'm using this word binary. Binary means that it's to do with two. We have binary, which is a counting system based on just two signs, the two signs that are represented by a switch, which can be on or off. And in numbers, those two possibilities are represented by a 0 and a 1, and that's the binary counting system. So it's to do with two-ness. In the previous video, I tried to explain what the word apologetics means, Christian apologetics, the defense of the faith, and this time I want to focus on what I mean by binary apologetics. Greg Barnson described the apologetics of Cornelius Van Til like this. He described it as pushing the antithesis. And Barnson was really the heir of Cornelius Van Til's apologetic approach. And he set out he did a PhD focusing particularly on Christian apologetics. And it was given to him really to try to expound in more detail Van Til's method. And so he describes it then as pushing the antithesis. And the idea of an antithesis is that you've got this binary nature, this two ways, that there is only two possibilities. And you're pushing people to choose one of those two, and to be clear that they are choosing one of those two possibilities. So there are two different frames for our thinking at the most fundamental level. One of them leads to life and rationality and meaning, and the other leads to death and the collapse of rationality into destruction and meaninglessness. I want to focus on this binary nature of Christian apologetics. And I've got some slides, as you would expect, to help me do that. So let me share these slides. So why binary? Why is Christian apologetics binary apologetics? Plato said that Socrates said this: the ability to cut it, and by the it, he means nature, the ability to cut nature up once more on the basis of forms according to its natural joints without trying to shatter a single part by going about it like a bad butcher. So let me try and explain what Plato is saying that Socrates was saying. What he's saying is that when we look at the world around us, we split it up, we break it up into different significant pieces. And that's what our language is doing. Our language is referring to the significance of the different things that make up the reality that we see. And language then tries to look at the joints, where the joints really belong, and make a division along the natural joints. And he's saying that this is what a butcher does when he cuts up the carcass. He follows the natural structure that is actually there. He doesn't just cut the carcass in half and then cut it into quarters and then start cutting each of those into half. No, he makes the cuts in the appropriate places and separates the different parts from the whole. And when you cut something, when you cut something in an appropriate place at the joints, or when you cut it inappropriately and not at the joints, what you end up with is two pieces. So it's the one broken into the two. So the whole structure of our thinking and our linguistic system depends on this breaking things at the appropriate places, and each break, each cut, results in two pieces. It's this and not that, and we're referring to this, not that. Why binary? Well, as I said, the whole structure of our meaning system is binary, and this comes out in a number of ways. And Jordan Peterson has his own version of this binary nature of reality. In his first book, which I think is his most important book, it's called Maps of Meaning. He makes the case that there's just two ways of viewing reality. One is the material, scientific way, where we look at things around us, and we sort of try to leave ourselves out of the picture. He describes this approach as looking at the world as a place of things. But he says that's not the only way that we look at reality. He says that the other focuses on human agency as an ultimate cause, and he describes seeing this way of thinking, this sort of frame of reference. He describes it as looking at the world as a forum for action, a forum for action. So it's either looking at the world as a place of things, when we look at all of the different things that are around us, or we look at the world as the world in which we have got to act and we've got to make choices. We have two hemispheres in our brain. So this is the idea that we have a left and a right side. We have bodies that are symmetrical, and if you draw a line down the middle, you have two symmetrical sides. Well, that's true externally. It's not entirely true internally, but it's true also with regards to the internal structure of the brain. There is a symmetry. It's not total, but there is a real symmetry in the brain, and the two parts of the brain are really quite separate. There is a connection between the two, an important connection called the corpus callosum between the two hemispheres, but there is a real distinction between those two hemispheres. Ian McGilchrist has spent a lot of his life focusing on the relationship between these two hemispheres of the brain in healthy and unhealthy minds. And he's noticed two different styles of thinking. One associated with, which is more concrete, which is more like the scientific way that Jordan Peterson refers to as a place of things, seeing the world as a place of things. More concrete, and it's particularly focused on speech. And this is the left hemisphere. The right hemisphere, McGilchrist argues, is more imaginative, more metaphorical, more intuitive, and more holistic. And he's put forward then his idea in a book called The Master and His Emissary. It's the idea that these two hemispheres can relate in two ways. There's a dominance relationship between the two different halves of the brain, and that we can think in two different ways relating to the dominance of these two hemispheres. And what he's arguing is that the dominant sphere should be the right hemisphere. And what's tended to happen in Western civilization is that it's the left hemisphere that has become much more dominant. And this is what results in a lot of unhealthiness in human thinking and in the human mind. Why binary? Well, again, we've already talked about the central theme of this type of apologetics, focusing on a switch. And again, I think it's related to the the two-way frames of reference of Jordan Peterson and the two hemispheres of Ian McGilchrist. And I describe it as this someone, something switch, a choice that we make at the bottom of our ways of thinking. So switch is based on the idea of being on or being off, and just two possibilities. And this is the idea of a distinction and a boundary. And it seems to me that this is the structure of the way in which we approach reality. The something choice makes the world as a place of things the dominant way in which we frame our thinking. When we trace someone, we break down someone into all of the different pieces that make up a person. And instead of focusing on the holistic nature of that person, which is a completely different being from all of the different parts, we focus just on the parts. So it's the idea that you think of a person as made up of a moving parts. The brain is made up of just nerves and nerve impulses and switching synapses, and you break it down to all of the different pieces to explain what is going on in a person. And the something focus loses the importance of the person. The whole person is an integrated and wonderful being, and an entire being, and that is something completely different than just thinking of it as the sum of the parts. So again, this someone something distinction is another of the reasons why I call this approach binary apologetics. And morality and language, I'm arguing, then has this binary nature built in. Not only do you have the personal and the impersonal as a fundamental distinction in morality and language, we have it just there on the surface. We have good or evil. We don't have a sort of third way or fourth or fifth. It's just one of the two. We have true or false, speaking the truth or telling lies. We have right versus wrong. And the Bible escalates this into the issue of life versus death. And it's there in our idea, in our concept of a conditional. In the word if, you have the idea of two possibilities and having to choose one of those two possibilities. So it's there in morality and language. It's there in the structure of authority. So here we have somebody being knighted, and the relationship between these two men is not symmetrical. You have one who is doing the knighting and one who is being knighted. And it's the king on the left who is doing the knighting, the dubbing, and it's the subject on the right who is being knighted. And so it's this idea of one person being above another. And this structure goes very deep in all our human relationships. Decisions, again, these fall down into a breakdown into a structure, which is a structure based on two possibilities. So a judge in the end has got to decide whether somebody is guilty or not guilty. And he's just got to decide between those two. It's not a whole vast array of possibilities. It's simply, is this person guilty as charged or not? the human relationship, again, this goes back to authority, but the human relationship with authority is covenantal, and this relates to that idea of authority over us, making decisions about us, and whether we acknowledge a person who has authority over us. Do you acknowledge the power, the genuine authority of this court? Do you submit to the claims of the person in authority? And this whole structure is what we call a covenantal structure. If you acknowledge my authority, then you will obey my commands, and there will be blessing to follow. If you don't acknowledge my authority, you won't obey my commands, and there will be bad things will happen as a result. And then finally, the binary apologetics is biblical. We put it the other way around. Biblical apologetics is binary. There's something of the ultimacy of God's creation in man, in that he has bestowed upon man the image of God. It's almost as if man is a miniature version of God. There is something godlike in every person. They are made in the image of God, and this is the ultimate gift, the ultimate blessing in all that God has created. It's the crowning glory of creation. There is something godlike in this. And part of this, I'm not saying this is all of it, but part of it is to do with the fact that persons can choose, and that this choice goes all the way up to the ultimate question of our relationship, the relationship between us and our God. And so we're created to respond to God in a personal way. And so there is a real possibility of turning our back on God. There's a real possibility of living in rebellion against God. And the Bible is teaching us then that this is actually what's happened with the whole of humanity. In our first parent, this great decision to rebel against God's commands was taken by our first parents together. They opened the door that God had forbidden. They declared a rejection. As a human race, they declared war with God. They joined in on the side opposed to God and opposed to God's claim over us. And so that's the structure of the whole of the Bible. Can this problem of rebellion and a breakdown of relationships between us and God, can this problem be solved? Is it too late? Of course, the biblical answer is by no means. As soon as this awful decision is taken, God presents the promise that there will be a savior from within humanity who would be wounded in the crushing of the tempting serpent, the enemy of God, who deceived our first parents. That deceptive head and ruler over humanity would be that usurper, that tyrant would be crushed, would be overwhelmed, and his captives would be set free. A great warrior is coming to the rescue. That's the basis of the Bible story. And of course, it begins, one of the great characters at the beginning of this rescue plan is Abraham. Okay, there's things before Abraham, but Abraham is an absolutely key character in this story. And at the center of God's relationship with Abraham is this binary nature of his relationship. And so all of humanity then falls into two categories based on their response to Abraham. So in Genesis 12, you have this verse, part of this arrangement, this covenant that God makes with Abraham. Part of it is that there will be blessing on all of those who bless Abraham. So in other words, the whole of humanity is broken into two by their response to this man, Abraham. Those who bless him, God will bless. Those who curse him, those who are against him, God will curse. Again, it's a binary structure. There's two groups involved. So there it is. The green is the category who bless Abraham, and the yellow are the category of those who curse him. You get this with Moses, and again, this is a verse that in Deuteronomy that expresses the nature of this binary arrangement. So here again, you have life and blessing versus death and the curse. And Moses is saying that there is a choice. You need to choose life instead of death. You need to choose blessing instead of curse by obeying his voice and holding fast to him. David, you could look at all of the Psalms and find this binary structure in all of the Psalms, but the first Psalm, let's put it the head of the book that's given his name, Psalms of David. This first Psalm expresses the teaching of the whole of the book, and it's a binary Psalm, you won't be surprised to hear. So there we are. The green is the those who bless, again, the same structure. Those who bless Abraham, they are the blessed ones, and they're described in the first part of the Psalm. And those who are the others, the wicked, they're described in the last part of the Psalm. A binary structure again. And finally, what about Jesus? Well, you won't be surprised to hear me saying that I think that this is exactly the same structure that you find in the teaching of Jesus. And his worldview was that of the Bible. He's a biblical man to the core of his being, and he follows this binary structure of a cosmic conflict. That's his fundamental meta-narrative. He believes in this God versus the devil conflict, and he presents himself then as that warrior, that unique, great messianic savior, the redeemer, king, the heir of the kingship of David, who alone can rescue us from the devil and from sin and from death. And he confronts us then. This is the whole picture of the presentation of the gospel according to the New Testament, that Jesus confronts us with this binary decision, this binary choice. And here it is very obviously in his teaching. So again, he has this picture of two ways, two gates going into two ways. You have a narrow gate with a hard, difficult way that leads to life, or you have a wide gate and an easy way that leads to destruction. You can follow the spiraling path upwards with your eye on life and this difficult journey to the vision of God, or you can go down the wide, easy way, just downhill all the way. But the end is death and destruction. So there's this binary structure. And it's not just there, it's all the way through Jesus' teaching. I've just got three examples to finish with. So here again, we have two ways of life. And the two ways of life are pictured as two different sorts of building site. So it's the idea of our lives being a building project, and two possible foundations are determined by our response to the voice of God, the words of the teaching of Jesus. So again, splitting it into two halves with the green and the yellow indicating the two halves. There are the wise who build their house of life on solid rock. And when all the difficulties come, the rainfall and the floods and the winds and the storms of life beating down on that house, it's solid. It's absolutely rock solid because it's on the rock. And those are then who hear Jesus' voice and put it into practice. That's their life. That's their life story. Hearing Jesus and doing what he says. They're disciples. That's really the idea of a disciple, a Christian person, a Christ follower. And then there are others who hear these words. And it's interesting that Jesus, again, I'm going off at a tangent here, but it's interesting that Jesus pictures every human being as a person who hears his voice. This isn't just people who have the gospel message in front of them. Jesus speaks to every single person, and he calls to every single person. So in every single life, there is a calling to this wise way. Wisdom is in every place, calling out day by day. The voice of Jesus is in every heart through the conscience. And so there's a foolish man who builds his house on the sand, and as soon as the storms come, when the great tests come upon that life, it hasn't got a solid foundation, and it begins to show that, to demonstrate that, to collapse. And I think this is the last one, perhaps the most serious and solemn of them all, and it's Jesus picturing the end game, the final situation that we all face. He's saying that this is also binary, that a binary reality results in a binary destiny. And so in this Judgment Day picture, he divides humanity only into two, not into a massive grid of possibilities, but he divides humanity just into two. It's a binary structure that he's talking about. There are the sheep, and these are the people who are on the right hand, and there are the goats, and they are on the left hand. And he says, the king says to those on the right, come, you're the blessed, you're the ones who've blessed Abraham, and it's been put into practice in your life. It's shown in your decisions and in your choices and in the way that you've conducted yourself. Your faith has been not just words, but it's been embedded as the fabric of your soul and life. And on the left, the message is, instead of come, it's this awful message of go, depart. And it's the cursing on those who have cursed Abraham. Cursing of Abraham is linked to the cursing of Christ, and the destiny is the same as the destiny for the devil and all of those who had followed him. They've had the message, they've consistently, day by day, rejected the message fundamentally. They may have listened to parts of it, they may have followed bits and pieces of it, but the fundamental decision, the fundamental choice, the fundamental direction of their life has been hostility to his voice. And it's shown in practice. Jesus isn't bringing judgment against these people for which there is no evidence. He is the perfectly fair judge, and he takes into consideration all of the opportunities, all of the differentials in people's lives, and he comes to this fair and just conclusion with regards to these two groups. So I hope I've managed to convince you that this idea of the binary nature of Christian apologetics, it's there in our lived experience. It's true to life. It's true to the reality of our experience. And it's also patently there in the Bible. There is this binary structure to the whole nature of the message of the Bible. So when I'm talking about binary apologetics, then I'm talking about something that is real, and it's something that is clearly biblical. Thank you.